This is another lesson that has been in the WHO program since its inception in 1981. And it continues to be an important conversation to have with our students. We continue to see rises of our youth who are involved in abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. As we get into middle school, as those children get older, we also see this start taking effect sometimes in the relationships that they're making romantically. And yes, I know middle school, it's like, what? But middle school, you guys know this. That's when we're starting to explore who we might be attracted to, and we begin dating and having relationships. And so we sometimes see habits of what they might be experiencing at home carry over into their relationships they make with each other. Abuse often does come at the hands of someone we love, someone we care about, and that's what makes it so complex and so challenging to talk about, because we have a host of emotions that we're feeling about it. So being able to discuss with your students about abuse in general, what it is, different forms of it, but also some of the feelings that they're going to feel as a result of what has happened to them, and that it's not their fault. That's a big thing to stress, is constantly reminding them that it is not their fault this has happened. So discuss with your students what different forms of abuse are. We can see physical abuse. In our previous lesson, we did talk about a little bit about sexual abuse. So that's another form of abuse. You can see emotional abuse. All of those sometimes go together. They go hand in hand. The scenario that you'll see in this one kind of has components of emotional abuse and sort of a threat of physical abuse. And so it gives you a really great talking piece to explore what things might look like and how we might feel if we're experiencing that. This is also a lesson that might strike up some feelings about discipline and abuse for yourself, for teachers who might be in the room as well, but also for your students. So being able to navigate conversations around the difference between discipline and abuse, and where some of those lines might sometimes be crossed, so that we understand that sometimes discipline is not abuse, but sometimes abuse may have started out as discipline, and then it crossed a line. So being able to navigate those conversations. What are some things that we can do to keep us safe? It's so hard sometimes when we think about those WHO rules of safety, the know, the do, the tell. It is sometimes hard when it comes to abuse, because oftentimes we, as children, we cannot avoid some of the abuse that we experience, especially when it's at the hands of someone that we love. But there are still things that we can do to try and stay safe, as well as start developing at least some healthy coping strategies around how to help ourselves navigate the feelings that we're feeling. And then, of course, if we can't avoid this situation and we cannot stay safe, who are those trusted adults that we can tell? This is a great opportunity to also reiterate with your students, so sometimes that mandated reporting aspect that we all have to follow. As youth serving professionals, it is our obligation to report when we suspect abuse. So being able to navigate a healthy conversation with your students around what that means, oftentimes they may downplay what's happening because they don't want us to tell. They may even say, I need to tell you this, but you have to promise not to tell anybody. It makes it worse. Yes, this is heartbreaking, but it is our job to make sure we are getting those youth connected to the resources and the services that they need for further support, as well as the family. Everyone is going to be supported in that process. So being able to also identify not only the trusted adults, but our responsibility to them and keeping them safe. This is a very tough lesson, but I can't wait to hear from you guys about things that work for you as you navigate these conversations. We welcome that feedback from you all. That's our passion, is hearing from you guys about how you have these conversations with your students, so that we can maybe help others who might be struggling, because it is a tough topic to touch on. So use your video, use your scenario. We do use a scenario of Kathy and her mother, and we do kind of see some going back and forth a little bit. There might be some conversations around how you could, Kathy may not be making the healthiest of choices, but that does not mean that she deserves to be abused. So that's where that conversation about discipline and abuse might come into play. And then, of course, we give you a follow-up activity. One of the goals of this program is that we want your students to feel empowered to spot the signs themselves. So by defining some of this stuff and start talking about what that might look like, what that might feel like, is sometimes the first step in identifying how we can stay safe from that situation. So the follow-up activity is a really great way that you can strike those conversations. We give you guys some handouts that give some information about what it looks like. And then we ask your students to create a scenario about what that might look like. So yes, utilize those activities as a launching point into some of the tough discussions that you may have to have.